Welcome to another episode of AnimeCons TV. I'm Doug Wilder, and today we're going to talk a little bit more detailed about running a panel, specifically some of the tech that goes behind having a good panel presentation and make sure you're not just sitting there talking and have something to show your audience. So we're going to kind of operate under the assumption that if you're working with this stuff, you've already had your panel approved by the staff. But these are also some tips that we're going to also let you know about in case you're thinking about applying to be a panelist, or if you're on a staff for a convention, things that you can do to make things better for your presenters. So hope you're all ready to take some notes because this is going to get a little technical, but here we go. So if you're a panelist and you have an application that's been approved, keep an eye on your email and make sure that the email you've provided to the convention staff is something you're going to be checking regularly. I know some people don't like to use their own personal email. They'd rather use a different one. If you're going to use it, whichever email account you use, check it regularly because they often send very important information. And if they do send stuff that tells you about what sort of tech they have in the room and what they can guarantee you, it's going to be in that email. And so anything they send you, read it, and actually read it twice because it's very easy to miss a couple details and things like that. Some conventions will also have kind of a panelist guide on the website of just spelling out everything that's going to be there for tech. Even some of the better conventions will even have pictures of everything, even like all the connectors and things like that, which is so helpful. I would love to see more cons do this because it guarantees it and it has made sure everyone's going to be on the same page as much as possible. So you've made your slide deck, you got it all ready. Before you even leave for the convention, before you even head out, take an evening or whatever, go through your slide deck, practice your presentation as you're a panelist, and just kind of practice all the cues. Make sure all the slides work, everything's in order, everything is working on your end, because the last thing you want is to have something go wrong because it's your fault. If it's something that can't be prevented, it happens, but at least try and have everything in order on your end. Also, a lot of conventions now have kind of in the panel operations headquarters or whatever they call that, kind of panelist HQ, a spare setup so you can test your equipment right before you get into the room ahead of time so you're not kind of bumbling to see it. So if you're going to be a panelist, check in early and see if you can't test the equipment. It's a good way to do it. So I'm going to go through a little bit of some of the things they use. I'm going to be using kind of some of what I personally use. I understand that everyone has a different computer or things like that, but these are some of the more universal things. So first up, I always say if you need any connectors or anything special, keep it all in one place. This is just like a zip pouch that I use. I keep everything right in there. Can take it easily, just toss it in my backpack, and everything I'm going to need for my panel is in here. It never comes out unless I'm using it for my panel. So I run a lot of things off kind of just my general iPad, which has kind of you can see it has a lightning connector right there. And it also has just a small audio jack, which that is what's known as a 3.5 millimeter audio jack, which is kind of just most standard headphones and things like that. And a lot of panels run off that. So if that's kind of what you have for sound, just make sure you have a connection for that. If you need an adapter, make sure you know about that. It's a really easy thing to test. Also make sure you know in advance whether you're going to have audio, and if audio is a big part of your panel, double check, make sure you're going to have it, and if not, you can maybe find a pair of cheap speakers that you can bring along, things like that. There are options available. Just keep an eye out for it. But if you're not sure, again, when in doubt, ask the panel staff from the convention what they are going to guarantee you, and they see if they can work it. The earlier they know about it, any potential challenges, the more time they have to find a workaround, find a way to make things better. So in this thing, I have just kind of, first off, just a general USB cable for my iPad and stuff, which is also important because it's how I charge the iPad, which just lucky the draw there. So one of the other things I always say is make sure when you're getting ready for your panel, you have a way to keep your laptop, whatever, charged, because you want to make sure you have battery, because not a lot of places are good about having power, having AV connections at the panel to this table. They might not always have direct power, so you might have to be running your panel on battery. And also, one of the things that in case you can't get to, say, a power outlet and stuff, keep a spare battery. Just something little like this. This is just one of those USB ones, but I can usually charge my iPad to about 75% if that thing's fully charged, which is more than enough time to run the panel off. But it's a good thing to keep handy. And of course, because I know not every convention has what I need, I have an adapter for my iPad. You'll see there's two things like here. This one right here, this kind of square block here, I'll zoom in on that, is a VGA connection, which is older, but a lot of laptops have this. It's kind of one of the better ones to use. I prefer using this because it's still analog, which means there's fewer chances for it to go wrong. More and more machines use kind of an HDMI connection. Again, you can just kind of double check what your machine has and what's available. The reason I prefer VGA over HDMI is because it's analog. HDMI sometimes, since it's a digital connection, there's going to be sometimes a communication issue and what they call a digital handshake for the two machines to communicate back and forth to one another. And that can lead to a lot of problems. We talked about how at Otakon this past summer, it seemed like almost every panel ran into this issue. And this was the common thread, was that they were using HDMI, and so the digital handshake wasn't what was clicking. So if you have access to using like a VGA connection like this, it's going to make your life so much easier. Once again, everything goes right back in the pouch. The other thing about one of these pouches, they're super easy to find. You can grab one. A lot of times you can find a nice colorful one. People in Artist Alley times, you can even go, say you're going to like a fast food place. You know, sometimes they'll give away like little lunch bags like this. They're a great way to keep it. And that way, it's kind of one of the things I pack for the convention. It's super helpful to have everything that, because then you just toss that in your bag and you know you've got all your connectors. So one of the other things that I also just say is, like I said, if you're testing on site, double check everything. If you're kind of using a laptop, look on your keyboard, look for how to switch screens and kind of test there. Usually it's one of the function keys on top of your keyboard if you're using a personal laptop, and you can set it up to either have what's on your laptop, have a matching screen, so your laptop and what's being projected are the same. You can have it that you just see only what's being projected is on there, nothing's on your screen, or have kind of a split screen that the projector shows one image and one half of the image your monitors, and so it's just kind of cycling through. This is one of those cases where everything is different. Just double check your settings and just kind of play around with it. It's pretty easy to just kind of Google that in advance, double check, make sure it works. And this is once again why, if they have the option to test on site, and this is something I wish more cons would do, you have a chance to double check, make sure everything's going to work. And if you need to just make sure that you're hitting the right buttons to get the monitor up and running, that's going to help you out a lot. Finally, I'm just going to once again remind you guys that if you have any tech questions, if you're not sure about anything, ask the panel staff and ask them early. I can't emphasize that enough, because there are so many times where little hiccups could have been prevented early on, and it would make things much easier to fix if they know about it in advance. And if you have to prep things like get your own adapter, or have a different setting on kind of your sound or something, they can help you with that, and it's just a good way to get in advance. But if you have any other tips about how to run good tech for a panel at a convention, or if you have any other questions, don't forget to reach out to us. We are on Twitter at AnimeCons TV. You can send us an email, which is podcast@animecons.tv. And of course, there's always voicemail, which is 762-ADEQUATE. We're also on Tumblr, Google+, and Facebook, so if you want to get in touch with us, there's no excuse. We'll be back next week with more content, and we'll see you next time.